Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Diffusing Anger in the Online Classroom. My name is Christy Wake, and I'm an instructional designer within the Center for Faculty Excellence, and I'll be helping facilitate this webinar session today. But our presenters are Dr. Paula DeWitowitz, Coordinator for PhD Research in the Richard W. Riley College of Education and Leadership, and also Dr. Steve Knight, Program Director for PhD and IDT programs, also in the Richard W. Riley College of Education and Leadership. And we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, and I'll just go through some basic housekeeping items with you today. Some of you may already be familiar with GoToWebinar and the control panel, but for those of you that aren't, this might be helpful for you. So you'll notice that you have a control panel on the right side of your screen, and it looks just like the one shown on the left side of the slide here. And if you find that your control panel is blocking the presentation, you can actually collapse it. So if you'll click on the screen for me, Paula, that's what it looks like when it collapses. It really condenses down nicely. And if you click one more time, it's just going to highlight that red arrow that I'm referring to. Perfect. And then click once more and it'll bring it back for us. And as far as audio goes, that second bullet there, you probably noticed that you had the option to choose your telephone or your mic and speakers. But you should know that regardless of which option you choose, everyone does come in on mute by default. And Paula, if you can click one more time, it'll just highlight that area on the control panel so you can see that. As far as participating throughout the webinar today, you have a couple of different ways to do that. If you click once for me, Paula, it's going to highlight the question box there. You can type in questions or comments in that box throughout the session, and I'll be monitoring those, and I can share any questions that you have with our presenters. The other option you have is to raise your hand, your virtual hand that is. And thank you, Paula. That button was just highlighted for you there. So I'll be able to see that, and I can unmute you if you do that. Fourth button, we've got a technical support number there for you. That is GoTo's technical support number. They're great, so if you anticipate having any issues, you may want to just jot that number down. And lastly, CFE has partnered with an external company to provide closed captioning to you. And I'm going to provide a link right now in the chat box. And this is a link to a live closed captioning feed. So if you need to use that during today's session, it's there for you. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to our presenters, Paula and Steve.
Hi everyone, this is Steve. Thank you, Christy, for that introduction. And Paula and I just want to thank each of you for being here with us today. We want to let you know that the key points that you can see on your screen right now are the things that we will be talking about and hopefully getting you some feel-good experience in doing. We'll have some interaction a little bit later on in the program. But probably the keyest of the key points, if that makes any sense at all, is that number one, avoid reacting personally. When someone is yelling at you, there is a tendency, as you can see in the picture, that woman pointing at her phone, is to sort of yell back at them. And that really doesn't help. It doesn't help your phone, it doesn't help you, it doesn't help the person that you're sort of working toward at, I guess. So you have those kinds of things. Be calm, be respectful, are all key aspects that we're going to be talking about, and I want you to sort of keep these in mind. And after this webinar is over, you will be able to get a copy of this PowerPoint presentation. So, you don't need to take notes. I really would like for you all just to try to absorb what Paula and I are going to be talking with you about. So, and if you have questions, just again, to reiterate what Christy said, in the chat box, if you'll type them in, and we will periodically stop and say, Christy, are there any questions there? Or raise your hand if you want to do it via phone. Okay? So let's move to the next slide. Specifically, what we're going to have, there are 3 outcomes that we want you to go away from this presentation. It's practicing, recognizing issues, diffusing the anger, depersonalize it, and reaching some conclusion. Now, the interesting thing that you have in this whole process is that the individual is often the one who is least able to figure out what's happening. And to help us figure out, if we could, I think we're going to go to a poll right now and find out a little bit about you. So if you would you please select one of the items that you see there that best describes your role at Walden. So go ahead and vote, please.
Give everyone just a few more moments before I close the polls up. Looks like most everyone has voted. All right, I'll share the results here for you, Steve.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like we have a pretty good mixture, mostly faculty, which is great. And we will be talking specifically about some student issues that are that come up, and for the several of you that are administrators working also as faculty, we'll deal with some of those, because often you get sort of the spillover, the fallover. So thank you for voting in the poll. If we could go to the next slide, Paula. One of the things that is very important in any understanding is, I think, Stephen Covey's principle, where he says, try first to understand. And you see 2 people here talking. So if you look at the guy on the left, he is listening, he's thinking, he's saying, there's some noise going on. Communication is both hearing and interpreting, but it's also sending. So you have to send a message, it has to go through some ether, it has to be received, it has to be interpreted. And at any of those points, it can be misinterpreted. And I think that is something to keep in mind. I would simply say that one of the things that is important to understand is to try to assume, and you know, assuming is sometimes bad, but when you're dealing with people, try to make the assumption that it's simply a misunderstanding. It's not someone deliberately trying to cause you pain or cause you problems. There are all sorts of things that sit behind. You know, perhaps someone kicked their dog, or perhaps their husband or wife yelled at them this morning, or perhaps their kid was sick and they had to work some deal getting online. I mean, all of those issues make a difference. So those outside, in the blue here, this outside stuff is sitting there causing problems. So again, Covey, try first to understand. Okay? Next slide, Paul. We're educators, so therefore we have to talk about conceptual frameworks and theories. We have 3 theorists that Paula is going to talk with you about, and the reason for doing this is that we want to change behavior. Obviously, we want to change the behavior of students so that they no longer react in an inappropriate way with you, or if it's a faculty member that they no longer react in an inappropriate way as well. So we have 3 theorists. And as I say, Paula is going to be talking with us about these, and we're going to do them in reverse order. So, you know, we have them in alphabetical order here, but we're actually going to do them in reverse order. So, Paula, if you would take it away.
Thank you, Steve. The first I want to start with is Prochaska's stages of change, and we thought this was most important because really, before you can start to create change, you have to bring people to a point or help them to identify that they're at a point where they can change. But you also have to recognize when someone really isn't ready for change, and when you really are talking to someone who is not ready at that point to hear what you're trying to tell them. So the pre-contemplation stage is a stage where you can't really create change because they're not aware that there is a problem. They're in the right, there's no question, and you have to give them time and probably exposure to other opinions long enough for them to begin to consider whether or not what they're doing is working, because you're not going to bend them. But when you hit the contemplation stage, the stage where they're considering that they might need to make a change and they're trying to figure out what that change might be, this is where you really can start to work with people. So as you're talking to students or other people who have issues, listen for them admitting in part that maybe there's another way to do it. Maybe there's something else that would change. And that's where you start to talk to them about what options are. When they hit the preparation stage, that's where you really get the best work, because that's where they're trying to get ready to make the change. They haven't actually done it yet, but they're trying to figure out what it is they really need to change. You know, they've identified that there are other things that are there that might work. They're trying to decide what they're going to do to make it work. And when you can influence them there, then they can have a smoother transition and you can get the kind of result that you want. Action is actually the point at which they are making that change. That's where you want them to be. And you want them to feel success when they're there, so that they will go on to the maintenance stage, which is that's a great job, you've done it, look at how far you've come, that kind of point. Whether you actually say it or not, you know, you want them to feel that attaboy when they hit that point. So these are the stages that you need to kind of be aware of as you work with people and really start to kind of get attuned to whether they're at that pre-contemplation stage or whether they're at that preparation stage, you know, where they are, so you can see what you can do with them. One of the big points of this is that there's the concept of continuity versus change. If you look at things, you can look at them from one of 2 kinds of perspectives. The reflect, engage, and practice perspective, which is really someone who's open to change, who's open to seeing that there are other ways of doing things, or the judgment, fear, frustration kind of mode, where people are really stuck and defensive. They tend to be very defensive and not see other options. So part of what you are doing as you help someone to change their attitude is really to help them to break out of that mode of being judgmental by helping them to create curiosity. Well, yes, this is one thing, but what other options are there out there? You know, you see something that's bad about this, let's see what good things might come out of it instead. Fear to excitement. Well, I know this is really scary, but look at the things you can accomplish with it. Look at the ways that you can expand your world, or that you can really reach for that dream that you have. And then the idea of practice to courage. So you give them the chance to change their judgment to curiosity, their fear to excitement. You get them to take that step, and then you help them to practice it and see that they have actually accomplished something with that, so that they can take the next step and the next step and the next step more courageously, less fearfully, less judgmentally than they were in the past. So that's where we're trying to get people to. Kotter's 8-step change model really helps with kind of conceptualizing this, because you, as the person who's helping someone to change, a student, a faculty member, someone else you're having trouble with, trying to see, to come to an agreement with or to move forward with in some situation. You have to create a sense of urgency, and you can do this. You can help them to see that if they don't change the way that they approach this, there's going to be a bad consequence. They won't get where they want to go. You can help them to see that without being threatening. You know, do it in a way that I really want to help you change so that you can succeed. So let's work on this together because this is really important to us. That is essentially the beginning of your creating a powerful coalition with the individual so that you can bring a person to the point where they want to change and where you're in the partnership together, okay? When a person feels that they're on your side, then they're much more responsive. If it's you against them shouting across a fence or on a phone at each other, then you really don't have a lot of chance for cooperation and collaboration and true change. But if you can create that coalition, I'm here with you, there's a sense of urgency with this. Let's do this together. Let's see how we can make this happen. How can I help you? Then you get a coalition that gives them a sense that they're not alone in it. It takes them from fear and judgment and the fear of being judged to being someone who has a partner in the process. From that coalition, you can create a vision for change. You can collaborate. You can help them to envision what could be different. And you can really help them to kind of move down that step toward beyond contemplation to actual action from the first slide that we talked about. You communicate that vision with each other, again, through collaboration. Removing obstacles is going to be really important because just as someone takes a step forward, they get on the bike to try to ride it for the first time, they might go, 2 or 3 revolutions of the bike and then suddenly slip and fall. Those kinds of obstacles can either disillusion a person and push them back away from trying to ride a bike again, or they can, through your encouragement, find ways around it. Try the bike again, and you can teach them how to avoid falling. Don't twist the bar that way. Don't pedal quite as quickly. Tilt your body this way or that way. Those same kinds of obstacles can be approached by you as a collaborative team, a coalition, to help a person re-envision how they're going to do something. So a student who's reticent about something, who sees themselves failing, doesn't do it right the first time, having you in there to help them say, oh, you can try the Writing Center. Oh, we have these resources available through the Center for Research Quality. Those kinds of obstacle removals, how's that for a word? Removals can make a big difference for them. You want to help them in the process, if you can, to create short-term wins, things that they can see their success in. So instead of falling at that location, they make it through. Oh, you went to the Writing Center. That's great. That's a great first step. What did you find out? Well, it looks like you have to do a little more work, but you've taken that first step. That's fantastic. You've formatted that table of contents right. You've figured out how to post this correctly to the discussion. Those small wins that can help them to see themselves getting to the point where they can actually succeed at the other end. Because for anyone who's tried to lose weight, and anyone who knows me knows I am perennially trying to lose weight, you probably know that a dieter goes through this situation where they have, we'll say 20. I'll be nice to myself and say 20 pounds to lose. Okay, so you lose 2 pounds, you still have 18 left. And it can get pretty discouraging. What we don't want is for a student to experience pound loss types of discouragement. So working on those obstacles at the same time that we create wins for them along the way so that they can see themselves succeeding, we build their confidence and we help them to change. Then once we've done that, we build even more on the change. Hey, you've gotten to here. What do you think you could do next? Wow, I bet you could do this. I bet you could create a bigger study. I bet you could take that class. I bet you really could do that practicum there or that internship or get that job. So you give them a chance to expand the way they think of themselves and their possibilities. You could create that social change you were thinking about. Then what you do is you help them to anchor those changes in the relationship and the culture. In other words, you get them thinking that way, and you get them to start talking about it. Start the hype, start the thinking, and get people to be able to anchor that, because that's what the culture expects. And we're lucky here because we have a culture of social change, so we can build on that. So you create a culture where, you know, good skills are rewarded, and people have the sense that they will eventually get there and that they can improve in a place of safety, and that they can discuss their ideas and discuss their problems in a non-judgmental environment, and then it continues in that manner and builds on itself. Lewin's change model we discussed last, because basically Lewin sums it all up. You get a person who's frozen. They're in their position, they're dug in, they're yelling into their phone, they're writing an all-caps email, and you're cringing because you know that they're yelling at you and you're not sure how you're going to deal with it, or you just want to scream back. You get that person to unfreeze. You help them to feel that there's a coalition. You help them to feel that you're in it with them, and then help them to see that there are other ways of doing things. And you help them to create that change. And once they've created that change, then your goal is to refreeze them with that change in place, with that culture, that environment that is right for that kind of behavior. You help them to understand what it means to be all that they can be. And I apologize for the metaphor that relates to the military, but that's probably the best way I can think of to help describe that refreezing process. Steve?
Okay, thank you. That was sort of heavy-duty theory, and I would like to, you can go ahead and start reading that scenario if you'd like to. It's a real one, but I'd like to stop at this point and see if we have any questions, either in the chat box or hands raised. Christy?
No questions at this time, believe it or not, but if you do have a question, now's the time to raise your hand or either type it in the question box for us.
Okay, thank you. Paula and I, as we were putting this together, talked about a series of situations that we have either been directly involved with as the faculty member involved, or we have been involved with providing help to a colleague. And so all of the samples that you're going to see, all of the scenarios that you're going to see are real at Walden. These actually happened. Now, what we have done in a number of cases is that we have changed the program, we've changed the department, so that hopefully you're not going to be able to identify the person. And I looked at our attendance list. I don't think any of you were involved in any of these. But if you were, just remember, confidentiality is key. So what I want you to do is to read that sample and contemplate on it for just a second. This is going to be similar to what we're going to be doing in a little bit, but I'm going to show you a survey that asks for what you would do. So I want you to get this sample in your mind. So read carefully, and I'll shut up so you can. Okay, if everyone has read it, now the question would be, what do you do? And here's a poll. So what would you most feel like doing? Don't try to pick what is, and I'm not sure that there is a right answer, but don't try to pick what you think that Paula and I are assuming is the right answer. What would you most feel like doing? If you would please select that.
Just a few more seconds and I'll close the poll up. All right, and here's the results for you, Steve.
Okay. Okay. So no one selected that you're going to send an email telling your colleague why they should pay attention to you. That's interesting. Call your colleague and find out why he's being obnoxious. Most of you obviously have picked send an email and ask for a time to talk. And then a few of you would discuss your reasoning with the student as to why you're having that interaction. As I say, I'm not sure that there is a correct answer. Probably the one that most of you selected is the one that I would do, simply because there's obviously, remember that Covey, seek first to understand. So why is this methodologist disagreeing with me if I'm the committee member? And why are they disagreeing? I need to know that. So that's a good one. Now, you know, I would add a caveat here, and several of you selected talk with the student. You know, I am generally opposed to bringing a student in on professional discussions, good, bad, or indifferent. The students are coming from a different place, and so I would say that probably would be, you know, I'd rather someone call me up and yell at me rather than have a student involved. But anyway, okay, let's move to the next set of slides. And it's interesting, I seem to have lost the slides. Is everyone else seeing them?
I'm not seeing them either, Steve.
Okay.
This is weird. My system came back and said that I had lost, people can see your screen, click to stop screen sharing. It says that it's showing the screen, but it's now a series of little X's like I was doing needlepoint.
Huh.
Hmm.
Well, I have your guys' PowerPoint saved to my computer, so I can pop it up real quick.
Okay, while Christy is bringing that up, let me just tell you what we're going to do. There are two scenarios that you're going to be looking at. We're going to read them both, and I apologize because I'm going to read them to you to make sure that everyone hears all of them and you don't sort of get involved. And then posted in the chat box, there are going to be Google Doc links that will take you to the Google document so that you'll be able to feed back, because there's a question at each of the scenarios as to what you would do, sort of like that sample that we looked at. So that'll be the process that we follow, and then we will look at those. I want you to have a chance to look at each of them if you have time, and we're going to give you about 5 minutes, and then we're going to reconvene to discuss what has been written down so that you can see there to see if we've reached a consensus. And so that'll be the process that we're going to use. If anyone is not clear on that, could you raise your hand and Christy can let me know?
Don't see any. Well, actually, I take it back. Hand raise just went up. Let me see whose that was. Kathleen, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you right now. Oh. Are you there, Kathleen?
Yes, I cannot see the link Steve referred to.
Oh, they're going to be coming up. Yeah, they're not there yet.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. All right, so on your screen right now we have scenario 1. And remember, real situations, programs have been changed. You teach a course in research in which one of your students wants to argue religion as the basis for deciding what is ethical in each research situation that's being suggested. You've tried addressing this with the student using the university policy and freedom of speech issues, and other students have let you know that they've grown weary of having to read this student's postings. So this is a situation where you've got one student who is sort of badgering you as the faculty member, but other students as well, in the name of religion. Okay, so that scenario is going to be, what do you do? Okay, so this is scenario one. So remember, scenario one is a religion scenario in a research class. All right, so let's go ahead and look at scenario two. Scenario two, you are a male faculty member in a BS program. There was a creative technology project assigned to demonstrate the ability, a student's ability with various technology tools. One of your male students creates a Prezi that is laced with sexual innuendo and images. If you're not familiar with Prezi, it's sort of like PowerPoint. When you contact him about his project, he becomes extremely unreasonable and wants to know why you're harassing him. After all, he's followed the instructions. He points out that there was nothing limiting the topics, and after all, you are both male, so why are you offended? He refuses to redo the project using a different topic and threatens to take this higher. What do you do to diffuse this situation? So remember, number one was the religion issue. Number two are two males, male faculty member, male student, and the student in a project presented an application in which there were numerous direct and indirect sexual images and innuendo, and he wants to know why you, as another male, are offended by that. Okay, so what do you do to diffuse the situation? All right, so now in the chat box, you are going to see the docs, or the links to the docs. Scenario one, remember, was religion, and it's there, and scenario two, which is the sexual harassment kind of issue. So select one of those to begin, and we will give you about 5 minutes. It's currently, according to my clock, 12:35, 35 minutes after the hour. So at 40 minutes after the hour, we will start looking. And so there, so select yours and go to it, and then we will start back with number one.
Steve, did you want me to open either of these and just kind of watch as folks are typing, or do you want me to wait that 5 minutes?
Why don't you go ahead, and is there a way that you can split your screen and show both? It's sort of interesting watching it. If folks haven't used this technology, it's being in instructional design and technology, it's a really great way that you can have this interchange with your students.
I'm not quite sure if I can show both. I can kind of, go between the two tabs that I have, if that's okay.
Sure, yeah, it'll just be good so folks can get some idea. It looks like there may be more people in scenario one than two.
And you guys have the option or the ability to change the color of font that you're using if you want to, or even the font itself. You certainly can do that if you'd like. Everyone right now is coming in with that sort of red brick color, which is fine. But
somebody just went blue. Yeah, if you'll look at that bar across the top, it's a WYSIWYG kind of bar. What you see is what you get. You can change font sizes, font colors, etc. I mean, it's just like a word processing document up there.
If those of you are finding that as you're trying to type in, others are typing over you, that sometimes happens, try and just scroll down to the bottom of the document and click on it and get your cursor there and then start typing, and that should eliminate the problem. Sometimes, that happens. It's hard to know where other colleagues are going to type.
Okay, we have been about 5 minutes. If I could ask you to finish up your last thoughts in your document. I'll give you about 30 seconds to finish up any last thoughts.
I love that people are being so responsive. This is fantastic.
Yeah. And I think, Paula, that you and I certainly need to point out to them, in real life, you would never be required to do this in 5 minutes. And that's a key, is, haste makes waste, and sometimes it's best to let some of this idea, thought, marinate for a little bit. You don't have to react immediately like we're forcing you to do with this one. But it is very important. The other thing that I would say is find a colleague. It can be your specialization coordinator, it can be your program director, it can be your associate dean, it can be a fellow faculty member. You don't use student names because you need FERPA, but you have to pay attention to FERPA. But it's really important to get additional ideas and thoughts to make sure that you have considered, because we are human, and it is easy, very easy, to get so upset with somebody that you actually lose sort of sensibility, I guess is a good way to say it. All right. If we could go to the scenario 1, we will start with 1. And remember, this is the one that was the religion issue. And so we, let's see what we have there. I've sort of been scanning them as they came in. And so the first person is going to point out to the student, call the attention to the guidelines where research is deemed scientifically meritorious and ethical using the Belmont principles. Walden's documents relating to research. Okay, so that's going to put the first one is going to put the onus on the student. And then it looks like, that said, it's a good time to bring in a third party, program department chair, ombudsperson, etc., which is always a good thing. That was sort of what I was suggesting, that you get an additional perspective. Then we have a private message discussing netiquette. It's not necessarily about being right or wrong. It is an opinion, but for some individuals, religion is going to be a very difficult thing to discuss, because, when my mother used to have a thing, it's not being stubborn if you know you're right. And of course, the person with the religion issue knows he's right, so he's not being stubborn with the issue. And then here we're going to accept his idea about religion and point out that others have a wide range of religious ideas also. All ideas needed to be respected. That the whole idea of respect is really good. And someone else is basically echoing that thought. Arrange to talk with the student via phone, and I certainly encourage the phoning, the voice to voice, because sometimes what you type is not what you intended. Or remember, we talked about communication being a sending and a receiving and an interpretation, and sometimes you type one thing and it's interpreted totally differently, because I can say in writing, yes, sure, But if I'm talking to you, I could say, yes, sure. Totally different meaning to the same two words. And you all know that. So I would just encourage you to be careful with writing. Speaking is usually a much better way to get your meaning across. Discuss freedom of speech, our policies at Walden. Some classmates could be offended. And reiterate policy, state behavior. Okay, and somebody is going to work in child development with Mike Trapani and Michelle on any controversial issue, and that's a great thing. It's bringing in that colleague, those colleagues to help. Student make a connection between religious perspective to an appropriate scholarly, scientific, professional code, okay? And many programs are going to have those. Nursing, for example, has a very specific ethical code, professional code of conduct that they have to use. So that's always a good one. These are really good responses, and in a 5-minute time frame, I think you've done superb. Paula, any points that you have there?
I think these are fantastic, but the one thing I would add is that often people, when they shift to academia and to scholarly work, learn how to communicate differently. And so this person has very strong religious values, and I think a lot of us have the same thing, either strong religious or moral values, and they do guide how we look at things. The trick is learning how to speak as an academic or a scholar, so perhaps one thing that can be done is help the student to talk through their feelings with the process of deleting the religious piece, because religion is based, it's based on, obviously not on, for people who believe in it, how they feel, but on what they believe God feels. But they also, usually focus on reasons that it's felt that way. So you can help them to understand how to present their opinion in a way that is more scholarly accepted. If they're willing to hear that, they can delete that part and explain the why without including the religious piece. So it helps them also to think in terms of what some of those things mean to others, or could mean to others, or could be related to others with. It takes a little practice sometimes, but that might be a possibility too.
I think that's an excellent point, Paula, because most religions that I'm familiar with, and certainly not all of them, are based on moral and ethical reasons. So, it's not wrong to kill just because God said it was wrong to kill. It has to do with a different set of morality and ethics. And I think, Paula, what you were saying was that you want to try to remove the God said it's wrong to kill and talk about killing as being morally and ethically wrong. Now, the person may have his morals and ethics coming to him from a religious background, and that's fine. But a lot of a-religious or atheist individuals would also feel that it's wrong to kill. So it's, so you're trying to keep those moral, ethical values without disconnecting them from the religious reason, which is the personal reason, and it's fine to have it. And I think that could be something that you might be able to talk with the student about as well. Okay. Great. Do we have any questions, any hands raised on that section, Christy?
Nope, no questions or hand raising.
Okay. All right. Could we move then to scenario 2? Scenario 2, remember, was the one that dealt with the sexual harassment, the sexual innuendo, etc. The first person there is talking about, would review the policies at Walden and indicate how some students might be offended by the content. If he's unwilling to modify it, would point him to specific resources. and let him know it's not acceptable, and would have in the beginning what is acceptable and what is not, which is probably a good idea, and I think that assignment has now been changed to include that. Okay, the next person would state that gender has nothing to do with the offensive nature of the project and that treating people with a lack of respect was not acceptable. Report students' behavior is damaging to the image. Yep. Students need all the ideas to be accepted, respected, and acknowledged, that if he wants, he should take his complaint forward. America is a huge country with many points of views. He must also respect other points of views. Your freedom stops where my nose begins. I think it would be good to review all policies. Great. Yeah, a lot of policy reviewing here, which is really good. The student suggested that I'm harassing him when I try to steer him. I'd politely explain that there are other reasons that he should consider. I would state that I'm not sure what a gel is, would review the harassment policies, especially ones pertaining to sexual innuendos. Again, policy review. What constitutes sexual harassment, showing the student sense it would be acceptable in any workplace. And this is going back, it seems to me, to that professional code of conduct issue that our professional code of ethics that would be there. You know, would that person be allowed to produce something like that in a workplace situation with male or female boss that's being turned into? And again, looking at policy, suggests he has 2 courses, go to the program manager, or discontinue and end the change. Okay, so yeah, as I say, these were both real situations, and in at least one of them it did get escalated. Sometimes there's not a solution. Sometimes there's not a solution. In the first one, in the religion scenario, I think Paula's suggestion that she talked about of trying to get the student to separate religion as the reason why and look at the moral and ethical reasons worked. The second one, the one that's on the screen right now, was not solvable. All of the things that were suggested was tried. The individuals talked about policy, talked about why just because you're a male and I'm a male, it doesn't mean that I want to listen to your rants about, you know, sexuality. You know, it's the same kind of thing that just recently has happened with the Clippers. You know, the guy there, just because he was talking to his girlfriend about African Americans and not wanting them to do whatever, I mean, it's just not acceptable. I mean, period. Done. In this case, we can't fine the student $2.5 million and ban them for life from the NBA as they did with the guy from Los Angeles. If you hadn't heard that yet, I just saw it on the news. But so in this case, the student refused to redo it. He received a 0 on the project and ended up failing the course. He just wouldn't change, and that's his prerogative. He did appeal. He was turned down. He appealed to the next level. He was turned down. He appealed to the final level. He was turned down. He has since left the university, and I guess he's doing his sexual innuendo at some porno shop now. I don't know. Sorry. This was one of my students, so I know this one very intimately in more ways than one. Okay, so those were the ideas. If we could go to the next, now that you've had the next slide, now that we've had an opportunity to look at and discuss, I want you to sort of keep all of those things in your mind. Here is another sample, and then we're going to have a poll after this. We're going to sort of shoot you into it. So this sample, faculty chair in the PhD sociology program doesn't agree with the URR. For those of you not working in the PhD program, that's University Research Reviewer, basically that looks for stops, reasons why the dissertation work should not go on. real issues. The student has constructed a qualitative question but indicates the use of a survey and an ANOVA in the dissertation. The faculty chair is offended, indicating that she has had years of experience and disparages the URR's credentials. This is another professional that is doing this looking. It's a sort of a third eye out there. So you are the URR. Now, what do? You've been told. So here's your survey. So do that if you would, please.
Well, you know your eyes are going when you read ask for medication from your PD.
Medication. Well, that would be good. I dispense it all the time, actually. Don't you, Paula?
I'm not sure, but I do believe that Valium being floated in the air might not be a bad thing.
Good idea. Good idea. Okay. Are we getting pretty close to everyone voting?
Yeah, we've got about 75% that have voted, so just give it 5 more seconds. If you haven't already casted your vote, go ahead and do that. All right, I'm closing the polls, and I'll share the results with you guys.
Okay, so we're going to, email time to talk and the program director. And those are 2 excellent scenarios. You're trying to diffuse the situation, which is very good. Getting help from another professional is always good. Trying to solve it yourself. So, those are, and that depends on personality. All right. So now, some of you know our ombudsperson, who is Robert Brandt, and I asked Bob to give us sort of a basics. What does he see that would help diffuse anger? And here are his list of 6. Listen, listen, listen. Seek first to understand. Find an area of agreement. Bob suggests apologizing, and he doesn't mean, to say, well, I'm sorry that I'm wrong. That's not what he's talking about. Basically, what Bob is talking about when he says apologize is, I'm sorry you misunderstood. Okay, so he's not saying apologize because you're wrong, but apologize for them misunderstanding. Know what your own hot buttons are. Okay, each of us has them. It could be religion, it could be sexual harassment, it could be racial discrimination, it could be, it can be any of those things, all those hot button issues out there. And if somebody calls you that, you are a professional. So if I impugn your professionalism, that could be one of your hot buttons. Bob says pick up the phone. We talked about that. And then get help from a colleague. Ask for help. So these were Bob's ideas. Bob's boss is Gina Dyson. So we have Gina's gems. Gina has 3. She says manage expectations, basically sort of lumping into that area all of those pieces we talked about. Balance the baby with the bathwater. If you're going to bathe the baby, you got to have water, but you don't want the baby under the water. Seeking first to understand. And Gina suggests remembering it's more than likely not your fault. You're professional. Not your fault that the student is not listening to you or not understanding what it is that you're trying to talk about. So those are the issues that are there. And then if you get all of these things done, you'll probably get, if we could go to the last slide, you will win the Nobel Peace Prize. Because, Nobel, you remember, got all of his money, or most of his money, from inventing dynamite. And, that's sometimes what it seems like we're playing with students that are, and other faculty colleagues sometimes as well, I hate to say. But Nobel was able to utilize dynamite for a very valuable purpose, and hopefully we can do the same kind of thing. So I know we're almost out of time. We've got about a minute left. Paulette, anything that you have?
Yeah, I just want to throw in, I love Bob's and Gina's comments because one of the things that Bob says that just really hits it is find an agreement. And if you can only get the student to understand that the agreement that they have is that you want them and they want them to succeed, themselves to succeed, then that could make a huge difference. So the agreement doesn't have to be huge. It can just be something small, but it's a place to start. I just love that part of that statement that he made.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, Christy, do we have any comments from the audience at this point?
We do, and we have a hand raised too, actually, so I'll get to that first. Richard Floor, I see your hand is up, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. All right, Richard, are you there? Richard, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. First of all, fabulous session, and I love to see the 3 models of change that you brought in. One of the things that over the years as serving as a URR that I've noticed is a success factor for students in completing their dissertation, their program, is the ability to take constructive feedback without becoming overly defensive. And I'm wondering if there's anything that students are introduced to, maybe in an orientation course or in some early phase of their program, where they're given information about the nature and role of constructive feedback that they're going to receive, and that maybe they've never received feedback at the level and depth and of the type that they're going to receive in their graduate training, to help kind of diffuse things from the beginning, to help them understand you're going to be given feedback. It's not always going to be happy feedback. This is part of the process, and be prepared for it.
Richard, this is Steve. I think that's an excellent point. And in the PhD program in education, one of the things that we are doing, we're revising our first course that's coming through, and I believe that's in there. But it's an excellent point. If it's not, it's probably not too late to get it in, and I'll make sure, at least from the College of Ed standpoint, that we have that. Thank you for your comment.
Richard, this is Paula. I would also throw in that the research courses are designed like that. How effectively they're managed, one can't say, but they do have to do revision from the beginning to the end of the course. It's not as much as I'd love to see, but at least it's there a little bit.
All right, and there were...
Okay, Christy, was there a comment in the comment box?
There were a few comments. Unfortunately, we're over, so I'll just kind of quickly read through a couple of them. Before I do that, I just want to let everyone know that I will send a follow-up email later on this afternoon, and it'll have a link to this PowerPoint presentation as well as a link to the recording. And if you know anyone that would be interested in attending this session, we are offering a second one tomorrow, April 30th at 5 p.m. Central Time. And I'll include the link, the registration link for that in the email that I send. So please share that with anyone that might be interested. We don't have too many registered for tomorrow, so we'd like to amp up our registration if possible. Okay, as far as comments goes, there was one question. When you mentioned Bob's bullets, I believe you said he suggested to apologize. And Catherine says, this is an issue I dealt with. I repeatedly told the student that I am sorry and did not mean what she interpreted. She did not accept my apology because she wanted me to admit I was wrong. The situation is still not resolved with the student. What would you do?
Well, in that situation, what I would do is that I would say, I'm sorry that you can't accept that I'm apologizing to you for the miscommunication. It appears that we are having this miscommunication, and it's not my intent. What can I do to let you understand that I'm sorry for the misinterpretation that took place? And then what Kathleen may want to do is to involve her program director, coordinator, to be a mediator. I mean, it may have gotten so far that the student is just not hearing what she's saying.
Okay, great. And I think that's really most of them. The other ones that are coming in are just thanks to you guys, and they really enjoyed the presentation.
Okay. Well, I guess, Christy, Paula and I are finished. You know, and I'll offer for me, I can't offer for Paula, but if you have, and I see several of my colleagues from the College of Ed in the attendee list, so if I can be of help to you and to any of you, I mean, I'm more familiar with issues in the College of Ed, obviously, than other colleges, but send me an email, you know, and I'll be happy to try to help as an outside, one of those people that you can go to. I'm going to turn it back over to Paula for her goodbye, and then I guess we'll give it to Christy for the final wrap-up.
Yeah, Steve, thank you. I will say the same thing. I'm obviously not at the level of administration that some people, I can be helpful to some people, but I will tell you that I do have experience with coaching students and with coaching faculty. So if I can help with anything like that, just give me a shout, and I'm happy to be here to help with anything I can. And then I want to thank you all for having been here, because I appreciate the chance to share what we've picked up with others, so that maybe they won't have the same issues that we've had along the way. Christy?
Okay, thanks, Paula and Steve. You guys did a great job, and I pretty much already said my 2 cents. So thanks, everyone, for coming, and I hope to see you in another CFE webinar soon. Have a great day.